And we are live. Good afternoon, my fellow Michiganders. Good afternoon, my fellow Americans. Ron and I are extremely excited to have the attorney David Kallman on from Kallman Legal Group and Great Lakes Justice Center. Good afternoon, Dave. Welcome.
Thanks, Garrett. Great to be with you guys.
You know, I did a live this morning, Dave, and from yesterday afternoon, the excitement of our people between turning in the petitions and working towards the repeal of the 1945 law. And then what happened incredibly that nobody anticipated, the Supreme Court ruling yesterday. And it's probably in some ways they're like, is this real? Is this really happening? Are we really free? And at the same time, they're like, what does this mean? And they see this 21 days and all of that. So we thought there is no better way than to get you on here and have you give us some legal background, because otherwise it's just Garrett and I singing to the choir. So why don't you take it over and tell us what you think that it means, what they said, and then we can ask some questions.
Sure. Well, let me start with the decision. It is a fantastic decision. And there are two parts to it because, as we know, there are two laws, the 1976 law and the 45 law. And the Supreme Court ruled on the 1976 law, the Emergency Management Act. And in that law, they ruled 7-0. It was a unanimous decision that all of the executive orders that have been issued by Governor Whitmer since April 30th are invalid and no good and unconstitutional. And they're all thrown out. And the reason was because she did not go to the legislature and get legislative approval as required under that statute. So that was a pretty clear-cut decision. I mean, all 7 justices agreed on that. You don't get that very often. I mean, we got a 7-0 decision on Carl Mankey's case, but it doesn't happen that often. So it's nice when it does. The second part, though, is the most important part, and of course deals with the petition drive and Unlock Michigan, which is the 1945 Emergency Powers of the Governor Act, the EPGA. And what they ruled there was a 4-3 decision, so 1 vote, but it was 4-3 that our Supreme Court said that law is unconstitutional, that in its entirety, because it's an improper delegation of legislative authority to the executive branch, and that is improper under any circumstances. So the court ruled 4-3 that all executive orders issued pursuant to the 1945 law are unconstitutional, illegal, invalid, and cannot be enforced. So under both laws, the Supreme Court ruled 7-0 in one, 4-3 in the other, that all the governor's executive orders since April 30th are no good. So a fantastic decision, and that's what came down yesterday. Now, I know there's a lot of confusion here over the governor coming out and saying, well, I have 21 days and this is going to continue and everybody better still obey and all that sort of thing. And then saying, I'm going to enforce this through the agency. So we could talk about both those things if you'd like.
We definitely want to talk about both of those things. Why don't you handle them one at a time? The first thing people want to know is, what does this mean today? How free are we today, in your mind, legally?
Oh, we're back to normal. It's the way I look at it. This was a vote and a win for the rule of law. This is a vote for proper good governance in our state, that our representative form of government, our republic, small r, Republican form of government, is now restored. I mean, we haven't had it for 6 months. So it's a wonderful day for everyone. And so this idea that the 21 days, the governor's putting it out there saying, well, I can still enforce my orders for 21 days, is ridiculous. That is not supported by the law. The judge's opinion, the Supreme Court opinion, is effective the date it's issued. Now, there is some murkiness here, I will admit that. But the bottom line is this. If you think about it, when does the Supreme Court ever issue a ruling and then say, oh, well, you've got 30 days or 60 days or something, and you can still go ahead and keep breaking the law, even though we've ruled something's illegal? Think of it like this. Let's say the Supreme Court had a case in front of it, stop and frisk. We're all familiar with that, right? You can just go up to somebody on the street, stop them, frisk them, do a search, all that sort of thing. So let's say our Michigan Supreme Court had a law that approved that. They heard the case, and the Supreme Court said, we're not going to approve stop and frisk in Michigan. That's an illegal search and seizure. It's unconstitutional. They issue a written opinion. It's illegal. Imagine the police coming out and saying, well, guess what, folks? For the next 21 days, we can keep doing illegal and unconstitutional searches and seizures and frisks. And we can do all that because there's a 21-day. Do you see how ludicrous that is? There is nothing in the law that gives an automatic stay or holds in abeyance a Supreme Court decision. That's just not in the law. What they're referencing, so you say, well, where is this coming from? The Supreme Court rules say there's a 21-day period where either party can bring a motion for a rehearing. And so until that 21-day period is passed, then the court will eventually enter the final paperwork and the order and then send it back to the lower courts. Now, in this case, there are no lower courts because it's a federal court that sent this over to the Supreme Court. So there's the differences there. But that's the idea. It's a procedural thing. There's nothing in that court rule that says, oh, and by the way, during the 21 days, the Supreme Court decision is not binding or has no effect. That's nowhere to be found. That's just their spin on it, okay? And eventually, the Supreme Court decision will be published, right? It'll be in a book. You can look at it. It's going to be published. Guess what date they put on that published opinion? Yesterday. They put October 2nd of 2020. They don't put some date 3 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now. They put the date they issued the opinion. I've talked to a couple of circuit judges today already. Both of them said, no, the Supreme Court has ruled, we obey. I mean, from the moment that decision is issued by the Supreme Court, we're a lower court, we obey that Supreme Court decision. There's no 21-day waiting period. Right. And so we've been telling everybody, and I've been on, like you said, Ron, we were on a program at just right after each other today, earlier. I've been telling everybody, if state comes in and tries to enforce these orders over the next 3 weeks, call us. Call us. We're going to court. We're going to get TROs and injunctions, and we'll stop that immediately. There is no way they have that authority. The Supreme Court has spoken. And the last thing I'll say is there's actually a quote right in the Supreme Court decision. And let me make sure I get it right. I'll quote it here. Accordingly, the executive orders issued by the governor in response to the COVID-19 pandemic now lack any basis under Michigan law. Now. Now means now. It doesn't mean a month from now, okay? The Supreme Court said, here's our decision, and it means right now there's no authority for these executive orders. So we're more than happy, and we'll go to court in a heartbeat. If anybody's out there and they get bothered here in the next few weeks, call us.
That's fantastic. So I got a couple questions because they're coming up on the live feed right now, that especially me as a business owner. Number one, people keep commenting about the mask in the schools. Like, what's going to go on with that? I mean,
well, again, those executive orders are gone. They're illegal. They're unenforceable. They're unconstitutional. Now, does that mean your local public school is going to comply, or are they going to do what the governor tells them? Your guess is as good as mine. I imagine they'll do what the governor tells them to do. Yeah. So then you have, as a parent, a decision. Are you going to keep your child in that system where people don't care about your constitutional rights? And even after the Supreme Court rules, it shows their utter disdain for the other branches of government here, okay? Utter disdain. We don't care what the Supreme Court said. We're going to come up with some weird, interpretation that allows us to keep doing it. It's just ridiculous. So that's going to be up to each individual parent. Are they going to just say, well, it's only 3 more weeks, I guess I'll give in? Or are they going to fight this? My opinion, they should fight it.
Absolutely. And also, what about me as a business owner? I'm a chiropractor. I'm licensed in the state of Michigan. They're still saying that we have the mask mandate and all that, yada, yada, yada. So what do us business owners do? Do we have to mandate them still, or we can say no?
Well, first off, I need an appointment, man. When can I come by? My back's getting just kidding. Look, again, the orders are invalid. They're unconstitutional. They can't enforce them. If you choose not to enforce them and the state comes after you, call me, okay? There's no way that it should be enforced. Now, having said that, what if you as a chiropractor, Garrett, you said, I still feel better having social distancing and having people wear masks. Yep. And so I, as a private business owner, say, that's what I want to do. Well, guess what? You can do that. Absolutely. And then I, as a customer, can choose. Well, Do I want to go to see Garrett, or do I want to go see somebody else where I don't have to wear the mask, or I don't have to social distance, or things like that? You are now free to make your own decisions on your own medical treatment and health and care. That's what liberty is all about, and that's what people should have the right to do. But private businesses can do what they like.
That's great news, David. I mean, a lot of people needed to hear both of those statements that you just did. What about the rumors with, weaponizing the health department and other departments to bring down her tyrannical hammer?
We've been saying this for a few months now, actually since last spring, that there are laws that give authority to state agencies like the Department of Health and Human Services, like MIOSHA for workplace safety, like MDARD, the Agricultural Department for food and caring and stuff for how you handle food in restaurants. There are all these agencies that oversee these areas. They all have what are called kind of generically a general powers clause that authorizes them to take action to protect the public and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. So it's just kind of a generic statement in the law. It's never been used for anything specific throughout our history as a state, but it's there. And so what the governor's intending to do is to take those laws, which are just generic, and not really specific, and say, all right, MDHHS, MIOSHA, you take my orders now that have been ruled unconstitutional, and so I can't do it, but you take them and say you're doing this under this general law that you have authority under the statute as an agency to do this. And so that's what they're going to do. And then they're still going to go after people. All right. Now, having said that, this is still much more limited than what the governor has been doing. Is there any state agency out there that can lock down the state of Michigan and tell people they have to stay in their homes? No. There's no state agency that has that authority. And let me give you a good example, MIOSHA, right? They oversee businesses and employees, period, right? So if MIOSHA issues some regulations or something where they're claiming that they're doing this for the public health and safety, they can only apply it to the business and to the employees. Customers coming in, so let's use masks as an example. MIOSHA will, I'm sure, very well try to enforce the mask requirement on businesses and employees. But if they try to go farther and say, and any customer coming into the business has to wear a mask, they do not have the authority to do that. So you see the difference? There is some limiting factor here. There's still going to be fights, for sure, but it's not as all-encompassing as what Governor Whitmer's been doing for 6 months. There's no agency that has that kind of power.
That is all of that is the incredible information our people needed. Basically, what I was mentioning today about this 21 days. Again, I think you clarified that so well, because what I was saying today was she can attempt to get us to consent to whatever it is she wants. She now disagrees with the Supreme Court. That does not give her a right to do it, but it doesn't mean she won't try. However,
exactly.
If you are charged with something, the question is, how is it that they're going to enforce that? Under what law, under what fine, what court is going to say this was actually charged of them after the Supreme Court ruled? And unfortunately, she can't win that battle. Right.
That's what I'm saying. I think when this gets in front of a judge and I stand up and say, Judge, here's the Supreme Court opinion, poof, that case is gone. So I think they're trying to use fear and intimidation to get people to do this for the next 21 days while they try to implement everything through their state agencies. That's what this is about.
That's right. That's what I told people.
That's all it's about. And so people should not give in to the fear, should not give in to the intimidation. They have their rights back. Exercise them, okay? Exercise them.
And I said, as we have said, Garrett had told people from before when we did the Carl the Barber, when we said to stand up, open up, and show up, it was the same concept. If everyone did it back then, we would never be where we are today. It is that consent that everyone is. I said to someone today, I don't remember which radio program it was, I said, it's like at the end of World War II when they said to the people, you're actually free. And the people said, are you sure? Am I really free?
Yeah.
That's what we're hearing from people. I don't know. Can I really do this? Or can I do this? Because the governor has made it clear you can't do this. I don't care what the Supreme Court said. That's her disdain for all of us as individuals.
Right, and disdain for the legislature. But let me tell you something, again, even with all of this, and we're talking about this and what we're expecting is going to happen, and there's more legal battles to come, and that's all important, understand how big a victory this was yesterday. Our Supreme Court stood up and said, Governor, you can't do this anymore. We are a, executive, judicial, legislative form of government here with our branches and checks and balances, and you can't run roughshod over that. This is a huge decision. And secondly, we have cases going all over the state right now, literally. Jim's, Frisky Orchards, Farm Market up by Charlevoix, Carl Mankey, believe it or not, he's fallen off the radar a bit, but they're still trying to take his license. They're still charging him criminally. We have other clients. I just had a client in yesterday who's a construction roofer guy. They're going after him. All of these cases are going to be dismissed now. Because they're all based on the governor's executive orders, and they are no longer valid, and they're no longer any good. And so we're going to get those cases dismissed. Now, if the AG, we're asking the Attorney General to stipulate to the dismissal of all these cases. If they won't do it, we're going to be filing motions in all the courts, and we're going to be asking for sanctions and attorney's fees. I mean, the Supreme Court has ruled. This is very simple, okay? So for everything up until now, and all the people who have stood up, like Carl Mankey, they're being vindicated, and I can't be happier for our clients. Now, that doesn't mean going forward, we're not still going to have, I think the governor and her, executive branch have made it clear what they do to anybody who stands up to them. They'll come after you. It's pretty clear what they're doing, and they're pretty vindictive about it. All right. But I'm hopeful that this will encourage people, that people understand, hey, our system still is working. It was slow, but we got a decision from the Supreme Court that vindicated everything we've been arguing for 6 months. Separation of powers, improper delegation of authority, all the things, takings of people's businesses and all that sort of thing. So understand and be encouraged, that things are moving in the right way. And none of this means you shouldn't take the virus seriously, that you shouldn't be responsible for your own health and safety. And if you want to wear a mask and you want to do these different things and stay away from big crowds, I get it, especially if you're in an older demographic or you have, other issues that make you more susceptible to the virus. Of course, take reasonable, responsible actions to protect your own health. But that's the point. You should be able to do that. You don't need the nanny state telling you all this stuff and telling you when you can leave your house or what you have to do with your business and that sort of thing. We've got our freedom back, folks. Exercise it, run with it. All right?
I tell you what, David, you just made probably 100,000 people very, very happy.
Well, they should be happy about our Supreme Court.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're happy that we've been a small part of this. Actually, a lot of these issues, we were probably the first ones to raise them in the state because we brought that case back on May 4th, just a few days after April 30th, when her authority ended. And we filed in federal court and got churches and mosques and synagogues open in this state. And we were making these very arguments. So we're glad that we've been able to be a small part of this, for sure.
I've got two more questions for you. Number one, Isn't it true that because we had a unanimous ruling against the 76 extension, that's even harder for her to declare extra time, is it not?
Absolutely.
One is declared unconstitutional. The other one said you had 7-0. You have no ability to have any executive orders after the 30th. That is as strong, if not stronger, of an argument than just the 45.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So in other words, if there is a real emergency, and honestly, who's going to argue that back in March there wasn't an emergency? We really didn't know what was going on with this virus or how bad it was going to be. We were hearing on the news 2.5 million people are going to die. Remember all this? Our hospitals are going to be overrun. Flatten the curve. We heard all that, right? Now, none of that has been borne out in the last 6 months, but it still doesn't mean it's not a serious, problem. But was it an emergency where the governor could act? We didn't file any lawsuits before April 30th. We didn't take any steps to challenge because it was different at that point. But it's a defined period of time. And after that 28 days, the governor cannot act continuously under an ongoing emergency just because she says so. And so the Supreme Court affirmed the law. You have to work with the people's representatives in the legislature, have our government function. Our government was totally able to function during this time. And she just refused. Well, the Supreme Court has put that back and put it right. And so I cannot commend them enough.
So the last thing I want you to cover is all of the work that so many 60,000 individual citizens did in helping to get 500 and almost 40,000 signatures. And some of them were believing that because this was again shut down, that we don't need to repeal the law, that we don't need to finish the job that we've done. We want to put pressure on the Secretary of State. And I want you just to explain to the people how important it is that this law is repealed, because if the Supreme Court was different, that this could very well be a different ruling both today and again in the future for any future governor.
Sure. I think there's really two reasons here why it's so important to see this through and to still do it and push the Secretary of State to comply, approve the signatures, get it to the legislature this year. All right. And it's important. And one is, as you just said, the Supreme Court makeup can be different. I mean, we have two people up for election right now in a month. And Brock Swartzel's running, and I can't, commend him enough. If you don't know, he's a judge on the Court of Appeals. He wrote the opinion in the Court of Appeals for Karl Manke that gave us the springboard to get into the Supreme Court, where we got a 7-0 ruling for Karl Manke in our Supreme Court last spring. That was Brock Swartzel who wrote that opinion. So I cannot, tell people enough, get the word out about Mr. Swartzel. He needs to be on our Supreme Court. But what if it switches and now you have a liberal majority in our court? Who's to say another case doesn't come along and they resurrect the 1945 law and somehow distinguish what the court did yesterday and now bring it back? There's nothing stopping that. So that's why this petition drive is still so important, because it's going to repeal the law. It'll take it off the books. There will be nothing there left for a future Supreme Court to come back on and try to use again. Secondly, I think, honestly, it's symbolic. I mean, this is how our system works. It's important. It shows when the people get together, people, work hard, they can make things happen, and the government has to respond and has to do it appropriately. That I can't emphasize enough how important that is, and people need to be proud of what they've done and getting these signatures and getting everything in place and getting it in for review. That, and just for that reason alone, it needs to be followed through. We need to have this done. So for those two reasons, I'm sure you guys are going to keep pushing, and it's going to keep moving ahead. So, if the Secretary of State starts playing games, I'm sure you're going to be filing a lawsuit and you'll be trying to hold her feet to the fire. But that's probably another topic for a whole nother day. But I can't commend you guys enough for everything that you've done.
We wouldn't have been successful, honestly, without you, Dave. We've brought you up several times, but I have to say you're leading the charge with Karl, and the story did give a lot of our people the strength, I think, to stand up and help circulate these signatures. They really did. They felt they had legal standing to do it, rather than it just as a chiropractor and a guy that they don't know here in Newaygo, Michigan, that's telling them what we think. Honestly, you did it, and your decision that happened for Karl, and even him doing the commercial and the story for the Unlock Michigan campaign told about regular people wanting to do their regular jobs, fighting for themselves and their families, and that we were going to do it despite what the governor said. Yeah,
absolutely. Yep. And Karl's been a great client. I'll tell you, he's been a joy to work for. I'll tell you, he's a great man. He really is America's barber. I know that's what some of the media have called him. He really is. He's quite a guy.
And David, you helped a lot of people by, I appreciate you coming on and doing this interview with us, because you helped a lot of people. And just what you said over the past 24 minutes is going to allow people to have the courage to stand up for their rights, because they were afraid. They don't know what they don't know. And when we have a professional like you come on with your history and what you've already been able to do, you're going to allow thousands of these people to stand up and start fighting for what is rightfully ours. So I thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, like I say, we're glad to be a small part of it. There's people all over this state doing what they do best in their sphere, a circle of influence. And that's the thing. We need everybody doing this. It's not any one person. It's everybody doing it. It's we, the people. I keep telling people this, you hear this, especially from Christian folks, well, I don't really want to get involved. I don't really want to, push this. Politics is not for me, that kind of stuff. And then you'll invariably hear them quote the verse. Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and under God, that's which is God's. And so that Caesar stuff is over there. Well, I always ask them, well, wait a minute. Who's Caesar in our country? Who is Caesar? Is it Governor Whitmer? Is it President Trump? No, we're Caesar. We, the people, are Caesar. So if you're going to render unto Caesar what the Bible says you're supposed to do, which is render to Caesar, that means you're supposed to be involved. You're supposed to be part of the process. You're supposed to be informed. You're supposed to support candidates who appreciate our values. You're supposed to vote. You're supposed to get involved in Unlock Michigan and help put petitions around. That's what that means. So don't confuse that. We, the people, are Caesar in our country, and we should start acting like it.
Absolutely. Hey, Ron, you're okay. You're good.
I am. I just wanted to thank you again for your time, and for all of your people out there that are watching. Understand, again, we're the ones who are sharing the information, the positive, truthful information with you that are going to help carry this through. But our actions aren't done. Our calls to action aren't done. We have to encourage those around us. Talk about the ruling, get rid of this 21-day. Everybody open up, be normal, hug each other. And I'm not saying don't be safe. As we mentioned earlier today,
right.
If you're in those immunocompromised situations, we've got to do that. The same way we have to take care of those around us. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to do it freely. And again, not do it by mandate.
Right. Absolutely. That's the thing. Our liberty's been restored. Our form of government has been restored. Our rule of law has been restored. We need to be rejoicing today. This is an awesome day in Michigan. Yeah. It really is.
And I was just telling Ron, I can't quit smiling. I've been smiling for the last 24 hours. So it's just, all of us, we've all been working so hard ever since April 9th. And it was just a glorious, wonderful day yesterday. And it's getting better every day now. The light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter, folks.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I've really appreciated it. Thank you.
We appreciate you. God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan, and God bless these United States.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.